But when you're commuting to work, a lot of employees have questions about whether or not injuries while they're going to and coming from work are, if they qualify for workers' compensation. So the general rule is that if you're going and coming from work in terms of a commute, that's not going to qualify you for workers' compensation if you're injured during that commute. It doesn't matter how long the commute is, but there are exceptions to this rule.
Right.
And exceptions apply, especially when the employee is going and coming from a break or from lunch. Are they on the premises? And that's why we put together this episode number 25 of the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer Livestream podcast, so that workers in California can better understand their legal rights in terms of injuries that happen while they're going to and coming from work. So, George, let's get into some of these exceptions that exist for the going and coming rule so our viewers can kind of understand, hey, if I'm going to work or coming from work, is there anything that could qualify me for workers' compensation? But remember, if you're listening to this and you do have questions, you need to dial the injury helpline at 844-984-8414.
Yeah, Alex, you explained it really well. This is a topic that's very confusing because it does have a lot of different ways that an injury can happen going and coming from work. If you're coming and going to work, usually on your commute, you're not covered by workers' compensation, right, Alex? If someone rear ends you, you can't put a workers' compensation claim forward. It would be a personal injury claim. You would go after the insurance company of that driver, and that's how you would recuperate your money for your expenses, for your medical fees, for your car. But there are exceptions. If you are maybe stopping along the way to pick up something for your employer, that is one of the exceptions. I've had cases where they weren't delivery drivers. They were workers that worked out of one location, but maybe the employer had asked them, hey, on your way to work tomorrow, can you drop by Home Depot and pick up these things we need because it's on your way? Now you're stopping at Home Depot and you're heading to work and someone rear ends you. What now, Alex?
Yeah, you're going to have potential workers' compensation rights because you're doing something for the benefit of your employer. That's one of the exceptions to the going and coming rule. That's probably the biggest one. Anytime you're doing something for the employer, even if you're doing a mixed bag of things. So if along the way you happen to go and stop off at the post office, and while you're getting in your car and backing out of the post office to go to pick up something for the employer, that's probably going to be construed liberally to include workers' compensation benefits. So that's a pretty big exception. Any type of benefit that you're giving to your employer during that commute that's not just getting to a fixed job location is going to be an exception to the going and coming rule. And that can count on lunches as well.
Right. If you're out on a lunch,
if you're out on a lunch, you're picking up food for your boss or something. Probably
especially if you're picking up food for your boss, because now you're doing an errand. Now you're not just on lunch, but even if you are just on lunch, you're still on the clock, right? You have to clock out because legal mandates say that you have to have your lunch, you have to have your times of break, but you're still on the job. So if you're on lunch and you get injured, what happens, Alex?
Well, I think it depends on if you're traveling off the site for lunch.
Right.
If you're on the job site for lunch, then you're certainly covered.
100%.
If you're in the parking lot, then you're probably covered.
Right.
There is a potential question if you're leaving to go to lunch with your coworkers and you're in an auto accident, I think. But generally speaking, every situation is different. You're going to have to look at the specific facts and circumstances of the situation. And if you're on a break, it doesn't matter if you leave the job site at all. I believe that's certainly, if you're just on a short 10 or 15-minute break and you get injured off premises, that's going to be workers' comp.
Yeah, and let's look at a situation that you inadvertently brought up, but I think it's really important. What if you go on a lunch and you leave the premises, maybe you even take a long lunch because it was someone's birthday, and you were actually not only invited, but pretty much told you have to come on this birthday lunch. You have to come out with the group. We're paying for you, but you're off the premises. You're on your own lunch. We'll pay for the lunch, but everybody's going to have a good time. Then you're actually still on the job. You're actually still participating in your duties, and you were told you had to attend a work function. And even though you're off the premises, you're on your lunch. I think that would definitely qualify for a workers' compensation claim if something happened while you were out.
Yeah, see, so the exceptions can be endless here.
Right.
They're all fact specific.
Right.
But I think that goes to the work function aspect of whatever you're doing. If you're
Right.
going to a work function, like for example, if it's after hours even, and you're going to something after hours and all the employees are invited and the employer's paying, yeah, if it's sponsored or even discussed by the employer, it's going to extend to those injuries.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit, if it's something that's extra and you were invited but definitely told, hey, don't worry about coming. This is not work related. Nothing's going to happen. You don't have to come. If you want to show up, that's a little bit different. Now, if the employer's telling you, listen, we're going to throw a 25th anniversary for the company celebration. It's after hours. We really like you to be there. Everyone's going to attend. Now it gets into a different area. There's distinctions. They're very, very small, but it could make a difference in a claim. Right, Alex?
Yeah, so that's why you need to consult with a workers' compensation lawyer. So if you're watching this video and you were injured while you were going and coming to work, maybe you had been on lunch, it might be before work, it might be at a work function, you need to consult with a lawyer about the specific facts and circumstances of your case. That's when you dial the injury helpline, 844-984-8414. Request legal advice. Remember, this is not legal advice. It's general in nature only. We're going over some of the basic stuff that you should be aware of so that you say, hey, I got hurt. It wasn't really on the clock, or maybe it was going to work, but do I qualify? It's going to get you thinking about this situation, and maybe you're going to start to understand, hey, I have legal rights. I need to call an attorney.
Definitely. So one of the exceptions that we're actually going to talk about today, Alex, besides the ones we already discussed, is if your employer actually pays for your wages or for your expenses while you're commuting, right? So if they're paying for your expenses, maybe they give you a car allowance, maybe they give you a gas card, or they're paying you for your time on the road, that could be an exception, right?
Yeah, so if the employer is paying for your transportation or mandates that you get to work in some certain way, those are going to be exceptions to the going and coming rule. Like for example, if the employer says, hey, you need to bring your car to work, or provides you with a car because you need to use that car to do something for your job. The fact that the employer is mandating that you bring a car to work so that you can later use it, even if it's your own personal automobile, especially if it's a company automobile, that's going to fall within workers' compensation. And the going and coming rule that normally will exclude you from workers' compensation if you're going and coming from work, that's an exception. Employer transportation.
Definitely. And that kind of goes into our next exception, when they actually control your mode of transportation, right? So it might not even be a car, but they control your mode of transportation. Maybe they have a company that picks up everyone in the morning and takes them to work or something like that. If they control your mode of transportation, that coming and going rule kind of is negated, and we might have a workers' compensation
Even if
claim.
you're not on the clock, even if you're not being paid during that period of time, you're still going to be entitled to workers' compensation benefits if you're involved in an automobile accident or you're hurt in some other way.
Right. So here's an exception to that exception, though. Once again, let's give the scenario that you don't work in the same location every day, so they provide transportation for you. If you get hurt during that time, coming and going, could be a workers' compensation claim. Now, if you yourself want to bring your own car to that specific spot because it's more convenient for you, even though they provide transportation, that would be the exception to the exception. That might take you out of workers' compensation territory.
So if there's any question that you're doing something for the employer, or that you need to bring your car to work to do something for the employer, like let's say that you're the person who goes and picks up lunch for the office. So the employer says, hey, you need to have a car because you're going to be the one who's going to pick lunch up for everybody each day or 3 days a week. So you choose to drive your car to work rather than take the train. Well, the fact that your employer is requiring you to have that automobile there, that's exercising some control over how you're going and coming from work, puts it into workers' compensation. So if you're injured in that circumstance, you're going to have a claim. You can always file a claim, but if you want to know if you have a claim, you need to dial the injury helpline, 844-984-8414. Reach the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast.